Grammy Award-winning violinist Joshua Bell returns to the San Francisco Symphony. Experience the power, precision, and passion of one of the world's great violinists. Hear Joshua Bell in Brahms' famed Violin Concerto with the Academy of St. Martin in the Fields. That's Joshua Bell, March 1st at the San Francisco Symphony. Tickets at sfsymphony.org.
Hi there, everyone. It's Nicole Miller with Real Estate Real and Unscripted. Thank you guys so much for joining us on this next episode. I'm excited to have you here and excited to be talking about an invigorating topic that unfortunately is a very big hot button right now, especially in South Florida. So today we are talking insurance. Home insurance. And I have with me Brandon Felder, who is my trusted insurance agent, who is with the Felder agency at Goosehead Insurance. And he is awesome. And I'm really excited to have him on here. I think that this topic is one that is super, super relevant right now in Florida, has been for years. Like that's kind of headlines about insurance issue. There's so much about insurance. And obviously in Florida, our insurance has gone up significantly. Condo insurance has gone up. Maintenance fees have gone up because of insurance. So it's really one of those big hot button topics. And so I'm excited to have him here. So Brandon, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me and for your time. Tell us a little bit about yourself, what landed you in this world of insurance, and what makes you different. I'm very big on being different, disrupting, making waves and doing awesome stuff at a high level. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, Nicole, thanks for having me. Always fun to get together and talk about insurance. I know that insurance isn't the sexiest thing. I mean, real estate is much sexier than insurance. Insurance can be kind of a boring topic, but how do we make it fun? Well, the first thing I like to say is I think nerds rule the world, and you got to be a little bit nerdy to do insurance. And so I think I'm a little bit of a nerd. So that's one thing that sets me apart. But yeah, most of what I do in insurance, Nicole, is one, I'm a broker. So not just an agent. There's different types of agents. I'm a broker, so I'm going to go shop around with a bunch of different carriers, save the client a lot of time. Two is, and I think this is really, really important. We sell all types of insurance, life, home, auto, whatever, but the majority of our business is home insurance. And the reason for that is because what I noticed in our area especially is that there was a vacuum of good insurance brokers that really know, one, how real estate works, two, how insurance works, and then three, what's super important to me, big hobby of mine, is construction. So you and I can talk about construction for a long. So construction's a big hobby of mine. I've flipped houses. I've done a ton of work myself. Before I got into insurance, I thought about getting my GC license. And then I thought, I don't like labor that much. So
I just like the idea of it.
Yeah. So I'll do stuff around my house, but maybe help a friend. That's about it.
Awesome. Well, yeah, no, you and I could talk. I call Brandon, I ask him a question, and then like 30 minutes later, I'm like, dude, okay, I'll let you go. I know we just keep going on and on. So I appreciate that. So I'm going to start with just something that kind of came off the top of my head right now in light of the conversation on my last show that I had with inspections. And basically, with insurance right now, as a realtor, I will have, agents that'll tell me, hey, you can't get insurance with that. Hey, the roof is X years old, so we need to do this because you're not going to get insurance. I can't tell you how many, it's all day long on my listings. They'll say, you can't, there's no option. So you do know that that's going to be, no, I don't, because I closed like 6 of them this year and there were provisions for it and it's all good. So, that's kind of a big pain point right now, I think, with a lot of homes that are on the market. A lot of our inventory, a lot of the roofs are older. a lot of panel issues coming about. What are the things that come up on an inspection that can quote unquote derail the ability to get insurance, and or so people think. And what are the options that are out there, right? Because we're solutions people. We have to come up with solutions. Nothing is the end of the world. There's an answer and a way to figure out everything. So, are there things that get to the point where they're like totally dead in the water? You are done, cooked, and that's it. And then things that people think you're dead in the water and you have no ability to get insurance, but there are provisions and there's things that are exist out there to fix that.
Yeah, so there's a couple things I want to mention here. And I know the inspector you had on the show, great inspection company, love them. The short answer is there's not many things that leave it dead in the water. But let me explain a couple things. One, about inspectors, and I know a lot of realtors will listen to this show. I have a whole entire training that I do called Insurance Pitfalls on the Real Estate Transaction. So it just talks about the question that you're asking, essentially. So we'll go over a few of them, but in that training, I have one slide that says inspectors are not insurance agents. Because I get this all the time too. And sometimes, Nicole, it's not coming from the other realtor. It's coming from the inspector that said,
yep,
oh, you see that? That's uninsurable. Well, uninsurable to me is a bad word because we have a solution for pretty much everything. There was one thing I used to say I didn't have a solution for. I just got one.
You got a new solution. There you
go. There's pretty much a solution for everything. Now, the cost might be more. There's not a solution for somebody that's, tight on their ratios if they're getting a mortgage.
Yeah.
But, there's things that we can do to get creative. And so, second thing I want to mention with this is what I call superimposing. So let's say you have Sally that owns a house and she's with an insurance carrier that doesn't want to do any more business in Florida. And her roof just turned 15 years old and they say, hey, we don't want you anymore. We don't want your house anymore, Sally. Well, then Sally tells all of her friends and cronies, insurance companies aren't insuring homes with roofs over 15 years old.
Yep.
100% not the case. I've insured roofs that are 50 years old.
Yep.
Now, that is what I call superimposing. They take their situation and they superimpose it on the whole entire market. It's not the case. Same thing with taxes or other things. My taxes went up by this amount. Oh, well, everybody's taxes are going up by 50%. No, it's all a micro basis. Now, there are macro factors in insurance, but there's a micro factors a lot of the times that affect things, and people will superimpose them. So now, to dive a little bit deeper into your question, what are the things that we're seeing a lot of? Roofs, ages on roofs are huge. That's the number one thing I see. We have a lot of workarounds if somebody's buying a house with an older roof or their roof is aging. Of course, you want to make sure you're maintaining your roofs. Make sure you're not falling for these roof scams where you can make a claim and you're getting a free roof. It's going to bite you in the butt. But roofs are a big thing. And roof ages last, depending on what carrier guidelines say, what insurance companies want, essentially. We like to call it their appetite. And I've seen everything from 10 years to 50 years on roofs, depending on the style and type. Second thing we see is electrical systems. There's a lot of outdated electrical systems, bad electrical panels that insurance companies don't want. Some carriers, companies will take them, things like cloth wiring. And then it goes into piping that is usually, your supply lines or the cast iron issue, polybutylene. We have solutions for all those things. Where it gets a little bit more funky is, I would say, what we're seeing also is some carriers, not a lot of them, but they only want properties that have full hurricane protection. So if you don't have full hurricane protection, they don't want it. And then most carriers will accept it, but you're getting major discounts for that full hurricane protection. So those are the big things: plumbing, electrical, roof. Those are the major items to be on the lookout for.
But not death sentences and things have provision. So Brandon has helped me close many deals in the last couple of years with things, right, that need to be done. And so let's say there is a company that's good with that's good. Maybe they don't do a 4-point, they don't take a 4-point, and they're good with the roof age. And then it might be expensive, but then, the buyer can then redo the roof if we negotiated a credit, and then they redo the roof, and then you go back and get, new insurance and you update it. So there's a lot of solutions. I know that there's some companies too that allow you to do like a, certain like 60-day or 30-day to cure. Can you speak about any of that, like those options? What options are out there that could help make a situation like when I get text messages that say you're not, the seller must, or you're not getting insurance? And, there are solutions, right? Like you can close with panels of certain things. Certain people will take certain panels. What are some of the remedies for these things that people think are death sentences?
Yeah, so one of the ones we see is a Federal Pacific electrical panel. I have multiple carriers that will take those, or they'll allow time after closing to replace them. Same thing with the roof. The roof is shot. Okay, well, you can change it within 30 days, 60 days, whatever it is, depending on the carrier. I have one carrier, Nicole, that they will just exclude roof coverage until you replace it.
Yeah.
No problem.
Yeah. And then obviously, there's considerations with like the loan and what type of criteria your lender may want. But I can tell you guys out there, agents as well. And when you're working with the right professionals that have a lot of options for you, we're solution agents. Like we have to, there's always a solution. So if your agent is telling you like, they're going to have to do this because they can't get insurance, be cautious about that. And as if you're working with someone who does a lot of business and is out there in the field and they're seeing a lot of things, they're going to have a lot more options for you, and they're not going to be as doom and gloom as others that may do a few deals a year that don't have that, the arsenal of examples of how things can get fixed. So keep that in mind out there. So, what is the overall market look like right now for insurance in Florida? I know I've seen more carriers coming in. We had, a couple of years ago, people were leaving. There's so many, there weren't that many carriers. People were leaving. People are coming. Like, what's going on right now? Are we in a better place? Are there more people coming into the market? Talk a little bit about that specifically.
Yeah, so we call it a hard market versus a soft market. And we are in a very much softening market, which is excellent. So what we see on our side compared to a couple years ago, just to give an example, Citizens in Florida is supposed to be the insurer of last resort. A year ago, about half of the policies month over month that I was selling, 50 to 60% were Citizens. Now it's less than 5%.
Oh, yeah.
Month over month. So it's great for us. We don't like Citizens. They're a pain in the neck to deal with. I'm thankful that they're there to help people that need them. But we've seen a bunch of new carriers come in. But outside of new carriers coming in, Nicole, and this is not usually what's talked about, but there's carriers that were in Florida. They had stricter underwriting guidelines, and now they've loosened them.
Yeah, that's
and so
the one.
It used to be like, we don't want any policies in Broward County. Now they'll play in Broward County or Palm Beach County or Dade County, whatever. So we're seeing these loosening guidelines. In addition to that, I'm getting emails probably once every week or so from the carriers I work with, and I work with a lot of them, that say, hey, we are decreasing prices by 10% or 5%. Now, we want to be careful not to superimpose that on everybody. So I'm seeing a lot of my renewals come in at the same price, which is a win. Like, people are happy with that. Lower. Sometimes I had one today that was, I think, a couple $100 higher. It's still going to happen depending on the micro of the micro factors of the property. But overall, in the macro, we're seeing decreases year over year in prices, which is just excellent. We're seeing softening of underwriting guidelines, which is excellent. They want it. They're willing to write older homes. They're willing to write, certain pipes or whatever. So
in other words, perhaps for the listeners out there, if they have a policy and it's coming up for renewal, it's a good idea to potentially shop and see what else might be now available to you that may not have been available to you at the point in time where you may have last gotten your insurance policy. Because I know, even personally, we had potential options for me as well. So would you say that that's something that could be a possibility for people having some open, going back and shopping now, that there might be some benefit? Shops and there was no benefit. There was nobody. There was no benefit. There was nobody. And it was like, nope, you got to renew with them. You got no choice. And it's like, great.
Yeah. So what I would say here is two things. One, you should be shopping your insurance every year. Every single year, go back to your broker first, and talk to them, see what the options are. Second to that, and I think this is kind of an interesting thing to talk about, Nicole, but I think you'll appreciate it. I get calls all the time from people that say, hey, I've been with this insurance agent for 10 years and my price went up and he didn't even call me.
Yeah.
Well, let me kind of unpack that. And I think this is good for listeners here as well. Insurance is a volume business. So in the volume, we might sell 1,000 policies in a year. For us to then the next year be working all the 1,000 policies we sold and then reach back out to all 1,000 clients, that's not really hard to do.
It's not feasible. Yeah.
Now, when you have a book of business, you've been in for 5-10 years, well, I mean, it is like near impossible.
Right, for sure.
And so the reason I bring this up, and I'm not afraid to bring it up because I want to set the right expectation, is you've got to be responsible as the homeowner, no matter how good your broker is, to reach out and say, hey, can you reshop this for me? Hey, can you take a look at this for me? You don't want to put it on the insurance agent because this is a automatic renewal business.
Right.
And so anybody that gets an insurance, that's what we love about it. Now, I have things in place where if somebody's pricing goes up by a certain percentage, I'm alerted on my dashboard, then I can reach out to them. But, we have really good systems, but still 10 years from now, I'm going to have to hire someone just to do that dashboard.
So
depending
to
on
the
what's
consumer
going on
out there, make it a point every year to go back and shop it and entertain it. Go to your insurance agent that has been, helping you all along, and don't hold that against them that they haven't done that. So I get, and you did explain that to me, and it makes sense. Because I've over the years amassed a ton of past clients, and it's very hard. I can totally understand that. But own that as a homeowner, and just reshop it and kind of see what else is out there at that time. But keep in mind that if you are changing insurance companies, you are likely going to need, depending on the company, a new 4-point. And depending on how old your wind mitigation is, right? So we were talking about on the other show. So, you want to also make sure that when you are going to go down that route, that you're going to end up having those inspections. So you could reach out to the inspector to come and do those reports. But that will come with it, right? When you change policies, 90% of the time they will want, or they'll do their own inspection. Like the one that I have in, that they made me walk around my house and take pictures of everything, and then all sorts of stuff in between.
Or both.
Or both.
Or both.
I think they did both on ours too with that one. So that's something to just kind of keep in mind as well. So as far as rates, we're talking, that you're seeing things kind of stabilize, sometimes go a little lower. What do you see from your experience from the last? I feel like rates have kind of doubled over a certain amount of time passed. So like if I look at my own policy, or if I look at what things were, would you say like the last 10 years, like what is the trends in insurance rates for like a standard home that you may have done 10 years ago that had full wind protection, blah, 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 everything the same house today? What is kind of the that increase, and in how much time have we seen that in our market? And if that's
so it's hard to answer for a couple reasons. But what I think is a defining moment in all of our lives, that for the people that the adults, young adults even, is the pandemic. And what we see across so many industries is that you almost have like this pre-pandemic pricing and
Yeah.
post-pandemic pricing.
Yeah.
And even in our like social lives or with our kids, we'll be like, well, how old is my kid? Oh, she was born after the pandemic or during my grandmother died before the
Before the
pandemic. Like
Was that
it's like
before
such
COVID or
a,
after COVID? Like I say
yeah,
BC
it's
and
like,
CE. It's like the same thing, BC,
yeah,
but before COVID
yeah.
instead.
So we all have this defining moment in our lives. And what I've seen over the years, and I hear this all the time of, I paid in 2017, 2016, 10 years ago, my insurance was $2,000 and now it's 6,000. Well, part of that is because of the cost of everything post pandemic. When insurance companies are insuring a home, they're looking at what's the cost to rebuild that home. They
Right.
want to know what they're insuring for. Life insurance, they just say, well, here's how much we're going to give, 500,000, $1 million, $2 million, whatever it is. But they're saying, okay, we're going to have this total insurable value and they're going to set their rates based on that. Well, the cost of construction post pandemic went up a lot. Now, during the pandemic, it was like wood. To talk about construction, wood was, $80, $100 a sheet of wood, plywood. It's come back down since then, but post pandemic, a lot of things went up. Even labor, like if you go talk to construction guys, pre-pandemic labor, guys would take $100 a day for labor in the construction industry. Now they want 200, 250 a day. Otherwise, they're not going to work. So all of those things have played into this, and we have seen quite a big difference in pre-pandemic pricing and post-pandemic pricing.
Interesting. So flood insurance. And talking about some of misconceptions around insurance, what insurance, your regular standard HO3 policy for a single family house covers, and flood insurance. And so, when I speak to clients and we talk and they're like, oh, I say, has the house ever had any flooding, seller's disclosure, the flood disclosure? And they're like, well, we did have, a leak in the kitchen. It caused the house to flood. And it's like, no, flood rising water is what's covered by the flood insurance, right? So speak about, what type of things are covered and housed by the general house, and then flood, and then, what's the deal with flood? Do you, should you get flood if you don't have, are you in a flood zone? So many people got put in flood zones that weren't, the maps were, changed. Talk a little bit about floods and insurance and what things cover.
Yeah. I'll flood you with that information. So what I would say is, your regular homeowner's policy is just going to be, like fire, water damage, liability, and then there's a bunch of other coverages, and we won't go too far into that. But flood, you're right. A lot of people will say, well, what if my house floods because my pipe bursts? That is not flood. Flood, for the listener, is rising water coming from the outside. So it's got to rise from the outside. If it goes in through your roof and goes into your house and then rises, that's not rising from the outside. That's rising from the roof coming down, rising up inside. It's got to be water went, for an example, up your driveway, up your front step into your house.
Yeah.
That is flood. And so normal home insurance policies don't include that. With some carriers, we can add it on. But typically, I'm putting that on a separate policy. And so what I would say is, do you need flood insurance? It's very risk tolerant based. Everybody's risk tolerance is different.
Right.
Same thing with like spending. Everybody spends and saves differently. So, my risk tolerance is higher. I don't have flood insurance, but I'm not in a flood zone.
That has flood insurance that's not in a flood zone.
Yeah, I have a lot of realtors that say, you know what? We're in Florida. The entire state is in a flood zone. So they're always pushing their clients to get it. So it really depends on the person's risk tolerance. If you are in a flood zone, which just to kind of clarify here, is what we call a special flood hazard area. If you are in a special flood hazard area, because technically everybody's in a flood zone, then your mortgage company is likely going to require that you get flood insurance. And the pricing on that could range.
Yeah, and some other things that kind of come to mind too, because I've worked condos over the years, that the condo was in a flood zone and the condo association didn't want to carry a flood policy. And guess what? Condo can't be financed. Or half the condo, I've had many, situations like that where they just didn't feel like, or they didn't have the fine, they didn't want to raise their maintenance fee that high and they just foregoed it. So there's considerations from that respect when you're in like a joint living situation, and it's kind of, people be like, well, I'm on the 4th floor. It's like, that doesn't affect me. No, it doesn't affect you, but how are you going to get out of the building? Like, that does affect you. As far as flooding, flood insurance, I wanted to talk briefly as well about that the NFIP being able to potentially inherit. So I know that that's not a very commonly known thing because I've come across it many times. But this year, I had a seller who had an NFIP, National Flood Insurance Policy, and they had a really great rate. Somehow over the years, it just kind of stuck. And I learned, I believe must have been from you, that they can potentially give that to the buyer. And I actually did that 3 times last year in my seller's listings. And so that's a cool little thing. Does, people out there, if they don't know about it, but, speak to that real briefly about the fact that you might get a situation where you're going to buy a house, it's in a flood zone, and you get the flood insurance, and you're like, "Ooh, God, okay, an extra $3,000." And if the seller had a certain type of policy, they have to do some work. They have to fill out some paperwork. I became an expert last year at it, and they can effectively like give it to you, right?
It's like an assumable mortgage. Now, on an assumable mortgage, you have to be qualified. With this, it's just the buyer assuming that policy from the seller. Now, what happens is they have to go through that agent and through that
person who wrote it,
company that wrote that. So what we like to do is we like to just get a copy of the seller's declarations page, and we can get them a policy at pretty much the same price. But it's a new policy to our client because we have a relationship with that client instead of assuming it. So that's something that can be done as well. So we aren't on the insurance agent side as big of a fan of assuming it, but here's where assuming comes into play. Let's say it's a $10,000 policy and the buyer assumes it. Well, the buyer is getting free money from the seller because that policy is paid through a certain amount of time.
Unless
so if it's
your
halfway
agent
through the
is
year,
smart and prorates it. One of my sellers, we made them pay.
So you can use this.
You can use it as a negotiation tactic. Yeah. Hey, we're giving you the rest of the year.
Yeah, I was just talking about this. One of my biggest markets is Marco Island, where I think is the most expensive flood policies in the state. And I told them, use this to your advantage if you're a realtor. If your seller offers that, do it in good faith. And let's say they're giving the client, based on the proration, $3,000. And then the client comes back and says, well, I want every socket cover fixed, every electrical plate cover fixed, and the AC cleaned. It's like, all right, go pound sand. I just gave you $3,000.
Yeah.
And they don't have an argument because you did.
You effectively did. Yeah, exactly.
So that's huge. Now that's only on National Flood Insurance Program policy.
Those specific
private market policies, they don't do that.
So when, let's say you had a claim, flooding in your house, how long do those claims follow you? Do the claims follow the house? What is an insurance score? Because I know when we have to bind policies, we have to give like previous address and date of birth. And so you're kind of like you as the human are branded as the person who had those claims. Like, speak a little bit more about that and what does that look like and what do people have to be aware of when they're out there?
Yeah. So I got a guy reached out to me that said, hey, I need new home insurance. I'm being dropped. And so I said, okay, send me all your information. I'll put some quotes together. And one of the questions I asked is, any prior home insurance claims? He said, yes, he had a $20,000 mold claim within the past year and a just under $10,000, what we call a physical damage claim. And so he has 2 claims. He's being dropped. Big surprise, right? Like, he's being dropped. So that happens a lot when you make claims. You are penalized when you make a claim in any of your insurance products, unless it's life insurance because you're dead. So, like your home insurance, your auto insurance, you're typically penalized. Now, I say that because in the auto insurance world, I mean, every single ad we hear on the side of a bus or a bench or the radio or the TV is, were you injured in a car accident? Called attorney Don and Don Worst or whatever, like that happens all the time. And so those guys will say, no, don't worry about it. You got to be careful with that.
And it doesn't
much
follow. So if you're buying a house and we're doing inspections and on the seller's disclosure, it says, have you had any insurance claims? Explain, elaborate, blah, blah, blah. So as a buyer, are you going to be concerned that any of those claims followed your house, or is it following the person? And are you going to get a higher rate because that house had a claim, or is it Susie who filed the claim who's going to take that higher rate with her to her next house?
So it's a both and.
Mm-hmm.
So as a broker, and we work with all these different companies, some companies and their guidelines, the claims follow the person. Some companies, the claims follow the property. Some companies, it follows both. So like I met with one company today before our meeting, and they only follow the person. So it's not going to harm that new buyer. The most competitive company I write with in South Florida, it follows the person and the property. So it's a surprise for us sometimes, but this is why for realtors, having the seller's disclosure completed if you're the listing agent and reading thoroughly the seller's disclosure if you're the buyer's agent is really, really important because it can definitely follow.
All right. Awesome, Brandon. Yeah, lots of really good information. Thank you so much for joining us here. If anyone wants to find you, what is a good website that houses all your information?
So I like to say, take a look at my Instagram, the Felder Agency.
Okay.
Listen, I'm pretty bold. I'm just going to put my phone number out there. Yeah. They're welcome to give me a call, shoot me a text, 954-326-9842. I work like a realtor works, weekends, evenings, whatever we got to do. We want to make sure that we're getting them through the closing table, take care of the clients, and make sure everybody's happy.
You are awesome. Yes, definitely reach out if you guys need new insurance, want to get shop your old insurance. Brandon is great, and he does a really great job at educating and explaining things and going through the pros and the cons and making sure that, if you want to do this but not do this, or add this or not add this, like what does that mean? And so I think that's super important than just having someone that kind of just throws that to you. He does go through all that. So keep that in mind, keep him in mind. Thank you guys so much for joining us. This was Real Estate Real and Unscripted with Nicole, and it was such a pleasure having you, and we look forward to seeing you on the next one. Have a great day.
Guys, it's no use putting it off. The best time for an underwear refresh is now. Tommy John underwear is designed for a perfect fit that stays put all day. There's zero chafe thanks to 4 times more stretch than competing brands. And their innovative horizontal quick draw fly is a game changer. With over 30 million pairs sold, there are thousands of men out there more comfortable than you. Don't settle for less. Go to TommyJohn.com today for 25% off your first order with code COMFORT. That's TommyJohn.com, code COMFORT. Tommy John. Comfort perfected.